I still remember that Sunday. The air smelled like baked chicken and rosemary, and my little house in Ohio felt warm from the oven heat. I had been cooking since morning. My son, Daniel, and his wife Ashley were coming over for dinner. It was supposed to be a simple family evening. I set the table carefully. Old plates that belonged to my mother. The blue napkins Daniel always liked as a boy. Every little detail mattered to me. When you live alone, you hold on to these small things. They remind you that you still matter to someone. When they arrived, Daniel barely looked up from his phone. Ashley walked in behind him, tall and perfect, smelling like perfume that could buy groceries for a week. I smiled and reached to hug her, but she stepped aside and said, "Let's not. I'm wearing white." That was the first sting. Small, sharp. I pretended not to notice. We sat at the table. I tried to start a conversation. "How's work, Daniel?" I asked. "Busy," he said, still scrolling. Ashley leaned back, smirking. "Daniel's doing great. He just got promoted. We'll probably move closer to the city soon. Somewhere more modern." My heart dropped. The house they lived in was the one Daniel grew up in. I gave it to him when I retired. I thought they'd raise a family there. I said softly, "Oh, I didn't know you were moving." Ashley chuckled. "Well, we need a place that doesn't smell like old memories." Daniel laughed. He actually laughed. It was like someone poured cold water over my heart. I looked at him, hoping he'd defend me, or at least say something kind. But he just shook his head, grinning. "Mom, don't take it personally," he said. "Ashley just means we're moving up in life. You should be happy for us." I forced a smile. Of course I'm happy. The dinner went downhill from there. Every word out of Ashley's mouth had a sharp edge. My cooking was too salty. My house was too small. My stories were too long. And Daniel kept laughing. Every time. When they left, I stood by the window and watched their car drive away. My hands were trembling. I had raised that boy alone after his father died, worked 2 jobs to put him through college. And that night, he sat there and let his wife humiliate me in my own home. I locked the door and sat down on the couch. The laughter still echoed in my ears. I whispered to myself, "You'll remember this, Daniel. Someday you'll remember what respect means." That was the night I stopped being just his mother. That was the night I decided I'd teach them both a lesson they'd never forget. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more true and untold stories, where pain turns into power, and truth always finds its way. The next few months were quiet. Daniel stopped calling. Ashley never texted, not even for my birthday. I kept myself busy with my garden. The flowers didn't talk back. They just bloomed when you cared for them. One afternoon, I ran into my neighbor, Mrs. Parker. She told me she'd seen Ashley at the grocery store. She had 2 full carts of fancy stuff. Talking loud on her phone, she said her mother-in-law is too proud to ask for help. I smiled politely, but inside, something burned. I had never asked Ashley for anything. Not a dime. Not a favor. And yet she walked around talking like I was a burden. That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea and thought about my life. I had spent everything on Daniel. His education, his wedding, even part of the down payment for their house. And now, I was alone. I thought about calling him. Maybe apologizing for something I didn't do, just to make peace. But a voice inside me said no, not this time. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from the bank, a reminder that the last part of the house mortgage, the one I had helped Daniel pay, was still in my name. My lawyer had told me that when I gave Daniel the house, I should have waited until the final papers were signed. But I trusted my son. I never imagined he'd turn his back on me. That night, as I sat reading that letter, I realized I still had power. Quiet power. The kind that people forget you have when they think you're weak. I went to my drawer and pulled out the file with all the house documents. My name was still there. Legal owner. I whispered, let's see how modern you feel when karma comes knocking. I didn't plan to be cruel. I just wanted them to understand how it feels to lose something you take for granted. So I started planning, step by step, slowly, carefully. 2 months passed before I saw Daniel again. He showed up one afternoon without calling first. I was in the garden, wearing my old gloves, digging around the roses. When I heard the car door shut, I looked up. He stood there, looking uncomfortable. His hair was a little messy, and he had a nervous smile. "Hey, Mom," he said. I wiped my hands on my apron. "Daniel, this is a surprise." He walked closer, glancing around like he hadn't been there in years. "Ashley's at a spa weekend. I thought I'd stop by." That made me laugh inside. Of course he came when she wasn't around. I invited him in. He sat at the kitchen table where he once did his homework. The air between us was heavy, filled with things neither of us wanted to say. I poured him coffee. "How's everything?" He sighed. "Good, I guess. Ashley wants to sell the house. Says we can make a profit and move somewhere closer to her friends." I nodded slowly. "You mean the house I helped you buy?" He paused. "Yeah, about that. We might need your signature to finalize some papers. The lawyer said your name's still attached to the title." I looked at him carefully. His eyes were darting around, avoiding mine. "So, let me get this straight," I said softly. "You want me to give up the only legal tie I have to the house I gave you? So your wife can sell it?" He swallowed hard. "It's just business, Mom. Ashley thinks." I cut him off. "I don't care what Ashley thinks." He froze. For a moment, I saw the little boy I once raised, standing there looking guilty. Then he straightened up, trying to act tough. "I thought you'd want to help," he said coldly. "I already did," I replied. "I gave you that house. I gave you your start. I gave you everything I had. And now you want me to sign away the last piece of it so she can flip it for profit." He didn't say a word. "Tell Ashley," I said firmly, "that the answer is no." He left without finishing his coffee. I watched him drive off, tires grinding against the gravel. The same car I helped him buy after college. As his car disappeared down the road, I whispered, "You picked the wrong person to underestimate, son." That night, I called my lawyer. I told him I wanted to update my will and change the terms of the property. I wanted to make sure that if anything ever happened to me, Daniel and Ashley would get nothing. Until they learned how to value what they already had. It was around Christmas when things started falling apart for them. Mrs. Parker told me first. She always did love to gossip. But this time her words came with a strange mix of sympathy. "I heard Ashley lost her job," she said. "Some issue at work. Something about company funds or a customer complaint. People are talking." I nodded quietly. I didn't say anything out loud, but inside I felt something shift. Karma was moving. A week later, I got a call from Daniel. His voice was tense. "Mom, can we stay with you for a few days? The heating system broke, and the landlord's taking forever to fix it." Landlord. That word caught my attention. Landlord, I thought you owned that house. He hesitated. "We sold it. Things got tight, so we had to downsize." I almost smiled. "I see. Well, of course you can stay." When they arrived, Ashley barely said hello. She carried herself like she was still above everything. But the fancy clothes couldn't hide the tired look in her eyes. I had cleaned the guest room. It smelled like lavender. As I showed them the room, Ashley looked around with a fake smile. "It's cozy," she said. Daniel stayed quiet. The next few days were awkward. I could feel the tension every time we sat down for breakfast. Ashley complained about the old furniture, the slow Wi-Fi, even the coffee. Daniel just sat there, pretending not to notice. Then one evening, I overheard them arguing in the guest room. Ashley said, "Your mother's enjoying this. You can see it on her face." Daniel replied, We wouldn't even have a roof right now if it wasn't for her. Ashley snapped, yeah, and she'll remind us of that every chance she gets. She wasn't wrong. I didn't have to say anything. Karma was already doing my work. A few days later, Ashley stormed out after another fight. She went to stay with a friend. Daniel sat alone in the kitchen, staring at his hands. Mom, he said quietly, I don't know what to do anymore. I sat beside him. You could start by saying sorry, not to me, but to yourself. For forgetting who you were. He didn't respond. He just sat there, tears forming in his eyes. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to see the truth. Daniel stayed with me after Ashley left. He helped around the house, fixed the porch steps, and even mowed the lawn. For the first time since his father died, it felt like family again. One morning, while we were having coffee, he said, Mom, I messed up, didn't I? I nodded. You did. But you're not the first man to lose his way because of pride. He smiled faintly. Ashley called. She wants me to come back. She said she's ready to start over. I raised an eyebrow. And you believe her? He sighed. I don't know. I still love her, Mom, but she only calls when she needs something. I think she lost everything. I looked at him and said, maybe that's what she needed to understand. Losing everything teaches us what truly matters. He nodded slowly, deep in thought. Later that day, I went into town to run errands. At the grocery store, I saw Ashley. She was at the customer service counter, arguing loudly. Her hair was messy, her makeup smeared. She looked nothing like the woman who once refused to hug me because of her white dress. Our eyes met. She froze. Then she walked toward me. Mrs. Harris, she said softly, can we talk? I crossed my arms. What could you possibly have to say? Tears welled in her eyes. I was wrong. I treated you terribly. I thought money made people better. I thought success meant being superior. But now I have nothing. And I understand. I studied her face. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was regret. I took a deep breath. Ashley, life has a way of balancing things. You don't need my forgiveness. You need to forgive yourself. But remember, these words can break hearts that never did you harm. Think before you speak next time. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I will, I promise. As I left the store, I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt peace. That night, Daniel told me he wasn't going back to her. I need to fix myself first, he said. I smiled. That's the smartest thing you've said in years. In that moment, I knew the revenge was complete. Not because I hurt them, but because life had done what I couldn't. It had taught them both the value of humility. And that, to me, was the sweetest revenge of all. The winter that followed was the coldest I'd seen in years. Snow fell heavy on the streets, and the sound of the wind against the old house made the nights feel longer. Daniel stayed with me through it all. He had found a job at a local auto repair shop. Nothing glamorous, but honest work. I could see pride returning to his eyes. The same pride his father once had when he fixed things with his hands. One evening, I made stew for dinner. The smell filled the kitchen, and Daniel came in, wiping his hands on a towel. Smells amazing, Mom, he said, sitting down. I smiled. Just like old times. He nodded. You know, I used to think success was money, cars, big houses. Ashley always said we deserved more. But now, I realize what I really wanted was peace. Just peace. I looked at him carefully. Peace doesn't come from having more, son. It comes from being grateful for what you have. He smiled softly. Yeah, I get that now. The next morning, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, Ashley stood there, her face pale and eyes red from crying. Snowflakes clung to her coat. Daniel, she said, shivering, please, I need to talk to you. He looked unsure, but let her in. She sat at the kitchen table, the same place she once called too small. Her hands trembled as she spoke. I lost everything, she said. My job, the apartment, even my car. I don't have anywhere else to go. Daniel stayed quiet. I could see the battle inside him, love and anger, loyalty and pride. I just need a place to stay until I can find work again, she whispered. Please. I waited for Daniel to speak, but he looked at me instead. Mom, what do you think? I took a slow breath. I could have said no. I could have reminded her of every cruel word she ever said to me. But revenge isn't always about denying someone shelter. Sometimes, it's about letting them face their reflection. She can stay, I said finally. But this is my house, and we live by respect here. Ashley nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. I understand. That night, I heard her crying in the guest room. Not loud, just the kind of crying that comes from deep regret. I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening. Then I went back to bed. Maybe this was the final stage of karma, not just losing what you had, but realizing what you destroyed. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. Daniel had gone to work early, and I was upstairs folding laundry. Ashley was cleaning the kitchen. For the first time since she came, the house actually felt calm. Then I smelled smoke. I ran downstairs. A thin gray line of smoke curled out from the basement door. Ashley, I shouted. Call 911. She panicked, grabbing her phone. I rushed into the basement, coughing as I went down the steps. The old water heater had shorted out, sparking against a cardboard box nearby. I grabbed the extinguisher and sprayed until the flames went out. By the time the firefighters arrived, the fire was mostly contained, but the smoke damage was bad. The living room walls were stained, the air thick with burnt smell. My eyes watered, and I sat outside on the porch, watching them inspect the house. Daniel rushed home, out of breath. Mom, are you okay? I nodded. I'm fine. Just shaken. He looked around at the damage, guilt filling his face. You shouldn't have had to handle this alone. Ashley stood behind him, silent, her face pale. Later that evening, after the fire crew left, Ashley came to me quietly. I'm sorry for everything. If you want, I can leave tomorrow. I looked at her for a long time. Her face was tired, her eyes swollen, but her voice was honest. No, I said finally. You'll stay. You'll help rebuild this house. Not because I need it, but because you do. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Over the next few days, Daniel and Ashley worked together, fixing the damage. They scrubbed walls, repainted rooms, and replaced damaged furniture. I watched them slowly reconnect, not through love at first, but through shared responsibility. One night, I found Ashley sitting in the living room, staring at the photo of Daniel's father on the wall. He looks kind, she said quietly. He was, I replied. He believed people could change, even after they hurt you. I didn't always agree with him, but I think he was right. She looked at me. Do you think I can change? I nodded. You already have. You just needed to lose everything to find yourself again. Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, thank you. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. Spring came early that year. The snow melted, the grass turned green again, and the house, though scarred, looked alive. Daniel had saved enough from his job to fix most of the damage. He was humble now, grounded, and finally at peace. Ashley found part-time work at a local bakery. I'd see her leaving early in the mornings. Hair tied up, hands dusted with flour when she returned. Life had slowed down. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. One afternoon, I received a letter in the mail. The envelope was from the bank. I opened it carefully, and my heart skipped a beat. It was the official mortgage release for the house. The last document tying me legally to Daniel's property. After all the years, it was finally paid off. Daniel came into the kitchen as I held the letter. What's that? He asked. I smiled. It's freedom, son. The house is officially mine again. Every penny I paid is now clear. He looked confused. But Mom, I thought. I held up my hand. Don't worry. I'm not kicking you out. But I want to do something different this time. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote a new letter, not to Daniel or Ashley, but to the local community college. It was a donation form. I decided to leave the house to the school after I pass, to be turned into a small shelter for single mothers who need a fresh start. When Daniel found out, he was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Mom, that's incredible." Dad would have been proud. I smiled softly. This house gave us memories, lessons, and pain. Now it'll give someone else a second chance. That's how you turn suffering into something good. Ashley came to me that evening. "I heard about the donation," she said quietly. "You're doing something beautiful. I'd like to help if you'll let me." I looked at her, remembering how she once insulted this same house. "Then start by baking something for the fundraiser. Show people who you are now." She nodded with a genuine smile. "I will." For the first time in years, my home felt full again. Not with noise or pride, but with peace. As I sat on the porch that night, watching the sunset, I thought about the journey we had taken from pain to forgiveness, from revenge to redemption. Karma had done its work, and so had I. By the time summer arrived, the house smelled of fresh paint and baked bread. Ashley had kept her promise. She started baking for the college fundraiser every weekend. The first time I tasted her cinnamon rolls, I almost cried. They were soft, sweet, and made with patience, the kind that comes only after losing your pride. The fundraiser was held in the high school gym. Tables lined the walls with baked goods, crafts, and handmade quilts. I stood behind the table marked Harris Family Donations. Daniel helped carry boxes, while Ashley arranged pastries. People from all over town came by. Some remembered Daniel from when he was a boy. Others just came for the food. When the local news reporter stopped to ask about the project, I let Ashley speak. She said, "This house used to be a symbol of pride and arguments. Now it's going to be a place of new beginnings. Mrs. Harris taught me that kindness is more powerful than ego." Her voice shook slightly, but her eyes were steady. I could see how much she meant it. After the event, the college dean shook my hand. "You've inspired a lot of people today," he said. "Not many would give up their home for strangers." I smiled. "I'm not giving it up. I'm passing it on." That night, when we came home, Daniel looked at me with quiet gratitude. "Mom, you could have made us suffer for what we did. But instead, you showed us what forgiveness looks like." I laughed softly. "Oh, I did make you suffer, Daniel. I just let karma do most of the work." He grinned for the first time in months. It felt good to see that smile again. Not the arrogant one he had when he laughed at me years ago, but the genuine one from his childhood, full of warmth. Later, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders. Fireflies flickered across the yard. I could hear Ashley and Daniel talking in the kitchen, laughing quietly. For a long time, I thought revenge was about making others feel the pain they gave you. But now I understood. True revenge is living in peace. While they struggle to rebuild the pieces of their own conscience. And that night, sitting under the stars, I realized I finally had that peace. 2 years passed. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt gentle and earned. Daniel and Ashley moved into a small rental nearby. Not far enough to forget me, but far enough to build something of their own. They visited every Sunday, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just themselves. Ashley opened her own bakery in town. She called it Second Chances. Every loaf she sold came with a note that read, "Be kind. You never know the battles someone is fighting." People loved it. Daniel was promoted at the auto shop. He started mentoring younger mechanics. When people asked him about his success, he'd always say, "It's because my mother taught me the difference between pride and purpose." I stayed in the same house, the one that had seen the worst and the best of us. I spent my mornings tending to the garden and my evenings writing letters to the community college. About the shelter project. Construction had begun. It would be ready in a year. One rainy afternoon, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, a delivery man handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo, the new building under construction, with a sign in front that said, "The Harris Home for Mothers in Need." Under the photo was a note. "Your kindness started this. Your story changed us all." I pressed the paper to my chest and cried quietly, not from sadness, but from relief. A week later, Daniel and Ashley came over with flowers. Ashley hugged me first this time, without hesitation. "Mom," she said softly, "the shelter will be finished next spring. They're planning to name the kitchen after you." I smiled. Well, it's only fair. Most of my life was spent cooking for people who forgot to say thank you. Daniel laughed, but his eyes were glassy. "You know, I still think about that dinner. The one where Ashley made that comment and I laughed." I looked at him and now, he shook his head. "Now I realize I wasn't laughing at your cooking. I was laughing because I didn't know who I was. I thought success was something you could show off, but you were right all along. It's about who you are when no one's clapping." Ashley took my hand. "I can't undo the hurt I caused you, but I promise, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." I squeezed her hand gently. "You already have." We ate dinner together that night. The same kitchen, the same table. But the air was different. Warmer, softer. No tension. No resentment. Just family. After they left, I sat by the window, watching the taillights fade down the road. The same road they'd once taken years ago, when they left laughing at me. Now they drove away in silence, holding hands. I thought about how life comes full circle. How people can fall apart and still find their way back. How sometimes you don't need to punish anyone, time does it for you. Before going to bed, I looked around my old house. The walls were still a little scarred from the fire, but I liked them that way. They reminded me that healing doesn't mean hiding the damage. It means wearing it with pride. As I turned off the lights, I whispered, "Thank you, Karma. You knocked on their door, but you also knocked on mine. You showed us all what it means to start over." Then I smiled, blew out the candle, and went to sleep knowing that every pain I endured had finally turned into peace. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more true and untold stories, where pain turns into power, and truth always finds its way.